the interesting developments or issues or phenomena to emerge from the COVID-19 pandemic and our collective responses to it was a greater recognition of both the ubiquity of migrants and migration, that really they exist in every society, and how critical they are to the functioning of our societies, where we realized how many migrants were part of our frontline services, whether in the provision of health or critical supplies, for example. So this, I think, was very positive, that we realized those two phenomena beyond the world of migration experts or policy makers. That, I think, is great. What was not so great was that the pandemic and responses to it also exacerbated many of the vulnerabilities that migrants face. It didn't necessarily create new ones, but I think it intensified vulnerabilities that many migrants, perhaps particularly, but not exclusively, migrants in an irregular status faced. For example, heightened exposure to infections, or increased impact from job losses, or difficulties in accessing services, including vitally vaccinations, and a intensifying of discriminatory or bigoted discourse against migrants.
I would also say that it's sort of impacting on regular forms of migration. You know, as some of the regular, what we want, legal forms of migration are closing, people who are very vulnerable are sort of tempted to move irregularly. So, for instance, in the last decade or so, a movement to the Gulf states is now a very key livelihood strategy for many Ghanaian, especially low-skilled, semi-skilled workers. They go as domestic workers, construction workers, security men, drivers, and so on. And there were active recruitment agencies, you know, employing them and placing them. There have been a lot of reports about exploitation and abuses. And the Center for Migration said it's a steady last, and we are getting the part that people are still going, but because the recruitment agencies have been banned from recruiting, now informal brokers have come into play, and they still try to recruit and traffic them. The latest we are hearing is that they move from Ghana to another West African country, a lot of it Nigeria. And then from Nigeria, there are networks, and then so they are still going to but now they are not going formally. And this is more worrying because then now they are going under the radar.
All of the big drivers of irregular movement that existed prior to the pandemic are still there, whether it's the economic conditions, climate change related displacement, conflict, violence. Certainly the economic devastation that a lot of countries are still facing as a result of the pandemic is driving a lot of people to move in higher numbers. But that's not necessarily related to the border and mobility policies. It's related to the other effects of the pandemic. I think we're seeing lots of different sort of interested shifts that could really have seismic impacts on migration for the foreseeable future. I mean, these erosions to the principle of territorial asylum, the increasing use of pushbacks, conversations about extraterritorial processing, the refusal to make exception for asylum seekers under public health orders, all of these shifts we've seen in the last few years, you know, you can tie some of them to the pandemic. Some were happening anyway. Some were justified under the umbrella of public health. I think that this is the direction of travel and certainly makes it much harder to seek protection in the modern world. But I think it would be difficult to hold COVID-19 solely responsible for that.